Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Phil Mattingly. John King is off today. President Trump huddled with his cabinet right now ahead of a face-to-face gathering with lawmakers on day 12 of the government shutdown. A substantive meeting or a political stunt? Plus, tomorrow marks the first day of the 116th Congress, making Capitol Hill noticeably more diverse. We'll tell you which members to watch. And after Mitt Romney publishes a scathing critique of President Trump, a fellow freshman senator asks, can't we all just get along?
There is an acronym for the word team, and it's something my mom used with me when we were growing up. Together, everyone achieves more.
It's like every Little League coach I've ever had. All right, President Trump is meeting with his cabinet at this hour, and we expect to hear from inside the room at any moment. We'll bring that to you as soon as we have it. The other big meeting on the president's agenda today, an attempt to get past a stalemate over government funding. Democratic and Republican lawmakers from both the House and the Senate will join the president for their first sit-down since the government partially shut down 12 days ago. Now, sources say the meeting will include a briefing on border security from officials at the Department of Homeland Security. Democratic leaders not exactly optimistic about today. One Hill source familiar with the meeting saying it appears to be, quote, more of a White House stunt than a serious attempt to have a discussion. The president, however, striking a curious tone on Twitter, saying border security and the wall thing and shutdown is not where Nancy Pelosi wanted to start her tenure as Speaker. Let's make a deal? Question mark. CNN is told the meeting will take place inside the Situation Room, which means likely there will be no cameras this time because that went so well last time.
Keep talking about it. The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very
times.
quickly. And
20 times.
I don't want to do what you did.
20 times
Chuck,
you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool. None of us have said.
You want to know something?
You've said
okay,
it.
you want to put that on
You've
my...
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll tell you what.
We disagree.
Kind of feels like 6 years ago at this point. Here's hoping today will go a little bit better than that. CNN's Caitlin Collins joins me from the White House. And Caitlin, everybody's been kind of waiting to hear where the White House is on things. What are their expectations, at least what you're hearing, about what today's meeting will mean?
Well, Phil, they're realistic, which means they are basically low. They do not expect them to come out of this meeting with some grand solution to reopen the government because the problems that existed 12 days ago are still very much the problems that they have now. And they do not believe that they're going to get anywhere just this afternoon in that meeting. Now, one thing at play here is the optics. There's a reason this is taking place in the Situation Room, where typically is reserved for national security meetings and not anywhere else in the White House that could easily accommodate the president and these congressional leaders. The White House wants to send this message that they believe this is such a grave crisis, what's happening on the border, that it is worth keeping the government closed until they can find a more amenable solution with Democrats. Now, the next question moving forward is, what does the president want and what is he willing to sign? And essentially what sources are saying is that the president isn't willing to sign something that only has $1.3 billion allotted for border security, and that's what he's telling aides. That's happening as Democrats are showing signs that they are not going to budge either. That is why they don't think there will be a lot of progress in this meeting today. Now, as far as the president's mindset, you can see what it is from his Twitter feed this morning, tweeting about the wall, saying that newly negotiated deal with Mexico and Canada, that trade deal, is going to pay for the wall. That's something that hasn't even passed Congress yet, and the president also said that there is construction happening on the wall, which is not true. No new construction has happened. That is coming as aides are squabbling over what the wall is going to look like, with the outgoing chief of staff, John Kelly, whose last day is technically today, saying that a concrete wall has long passed and is not happening. Now, we'll see what happens in this meeting, but they are not expecting a lot of progress here at the White House.
Yeah, at some point something has to give. We just don't know when or, frankly, what it's going to be.
Exactly.
Caitlin Collins will keep us posted. Thank you very much over at the White House. And now here with me to share their reporting and insights, Ileana Johnson, Politico, Carl Holst from the New York Times, Sungmin Ken with the Washington Post, and Catherine Lucy with the Associated Press. And I am very stoked with this group because I obsessively follow all of you to know what's happening in the world and on our respective beats. I want to start with something from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. He said this morning, if you want to know just how entrenched everybody is right now, take a listen to what a new incoming member of leadership had to say on CNN.
What we're unwilling to do is to pay a $5 billion ransom note for a medieval border wall that Trump wants to put forward, that he initially said, as you know, John, that Mexico would pay for. Mexico has not paid for it. The great deal maker has failed.
So it's a message we've heard a lot, but medieval, immoral is what Nancy Pelosi continually calls it. I'm wondering, where is the space? I'll start with you, Simon. You're on the Hill. You talk to Democrats. Where is the space for anything right now, or is it basically capitulation or bust?
I think there is no sort of area for compromise at this point, and I think we can look at how well things are going on the Hill. When we look at this meeting later this afternoon, I was asking a couple Democratic aides this morning, what do you expect out of this meeting? What's going to go on? And they're like, it's not even a meeting, it's a briefing. We expect to hear a lot of non-factual information from the administration and come out of that afterwards. So look, I mean, I think even for some members of the incoming House Democratic caucus, even the 1.3 that Pelosi and Schumer have pitched would go too far from their perspective. So it remains to be seen what would actually end the shutdown. I mean, I recall in the 2013 shutdown over funding for Obamacare, there was kind of this forcing a mechanism at the end of the shutdown because it was that debt limit deadline that really got everyone in line and forced everyone to make a deal. What's that forcing mechanism now? I don't see.
So you're saying we're going to have to wait till like August, September? I want to get to you because I know you're super plugged over at the White House. One of the issues I think Sungmin and I and Carl have heard a lot from the Hill is they don't know what the president wants. He doesn't have a number necessarily. They're not sure where he stands. What's your sense of things right now?
I think that Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the House, are telling Trump, they told him before the shutdown happened, and I think they're going to have to tell him now that he's eventually going to have to concede defeat on this. Now, that's not what we're going to hear him say publicly, but I think you saw the first stirrings of that a little bit today when he tweeted to Pelosi, let's make a deal, and he also said that Mexico was funding the wall. That's a shift from what we heard him say 5 or 6 days ago when he said we need to build the wall. Now he's saying large portions of the wall have already been built, and I think you can see a shift in his tone towards what he's going to say when he does fold on this, if in fact he does, which is, well, we've got large portions of the wall built, or we're refurbishing it, or we can find the money in different agencies. We don't need to get it all from Congress.
Yeah. Look, there are serious policy issues Democrats have with this, but there's also a lot of politics too. Take a listen to what incoming Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw had to say this morning, which really hits at a point that a lot of Republicans have been making.
He made a campaign promise, and they want to score points against him by destroying that campaign promise, but it's at the expense of our security. I mean, we saw this migrant caravan coming in last night. You know what stopped them? A wall, and that wasn't even a very good wall. Our Border Patrol can't handle that many people. You need some kind of physical barrier in certain areas.
So while Republicans, Catherine, might be unsettled by kind of where things are going, to Eliana's point, they also think that they have to get something out of this, even if they're not sure what it is. What's your sense, kind of the dynamic?
Yeah, and you're right. This is both policy-based, but highly politically charged on both sides. And we saw before Christmas, the president appeared to be sort of heading towards a sort of placeholder deal to come back in the new year, and then faced such intense pushback from his base, from commentators, that he really has felt that he's had to dig in on this fight. And if there was a little more give on both sides, it seems like it's an achievable thing to find some kind of common ground here. Some of this is semantics, some of this is dollars, which you should be able to move. The White House has come down some, but for both sides now, this is such a base issue. The Democrats know that trying to block Trump on a signature promise is popular with their voters. Trump knows that if he is seen as backing away from a wall, it is so critical to his support that it's hard to see, especially today, how they're going to pull back from this.
Yeah. Carl, I want to go to, since I know you're our resident psychologist here. Eliana made the point about what the president tweeted to Leader Pelosi, soon-to-be Speaker Pelosi. And there's a lot of question, like, what is the dynamic between the two of them? You've covered Leader Pelosi for a very long time. What's your sense of things going into this new Congress?
Right. I was going to say it's appropriate that the meeting's in the Situation Room today, because this is quite a situation. I think Trump has respect for Pelosi. And I think he wants to deal with her. They've been sort of back and forth this week of who's a better person to make a deal with, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I do think they're making a mistake in overestimating this idea that Pelosi doesn't want this disturbance at the beginning of her reign. This is the kind of thing she actually wants, in a way. It's like, this is our chance to start out, one, facing down the president, two, looking like they're the ones who want to govern. They're going to pass this Bill, I think that Trump and the president and the speaker can come up with some kind of agreement, but this is an unusual shutdown. Democrats like the government. They're usually in a big hurry. Remember how quickly they backed down on their last shutdown that they caused. But they're looking at this going, you know, why should we give? It's a new kind of Democratic Party now. They're under pressure from their left.
Yeah. One thing that could play into this going forward from today is that we've had sort of a holiday lull. The public hasn't been tuned in, so the paycheck impact hasn't happened. Museums and parks have been open. People are back to work.
Yeah, it's
showtime now, and so I think that is going to put some pressure on both sides.
I will say Trump was the only politician really in Washington during that time, and he missed an opportunity, I think, to get in front of the cameras. He could have gone outside the White House and said, I'm the only politician in this town. I'm here. I'm ready to work. Nancy Pelosi's in Hawaii. Why aren't these people here trying to find a solution with me? And we didn't see that. He did his normal thing on Twitter. He wasn't out in front of the cameras, and that seems to me like a missed opportunity for the White House, which is already being faulted for not spending the past 6 months selling the American public on the wall.
Yeah, it's. I think he's going to try and rectify that.
But he had handcuffed himself so badly with the statements that you showed earlier that this was always going to be his shutdown, and it's going to continue to be his shutdown.
Yeah, no. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. A lot of messaging. We can talk about this all hour. And as we spoke about this, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer just tweeted, President real Donald Trump has dragged us into a Trump shutdown week 2 without offering any plan that can pass the House and Senate. Everything's fine, guys. All right, up next, Mitt Romney criticizes President Trump right before he's sworn in as Utah's junior senator. Shout out to the Washington Post Karen Demersion, who called it right here on yesterday's show. What's your sense right now of how this kind of plays out?
I mean, I think that Mitt Romney's in the best case to actually challenge it because he had a national platform before. He's a real low-level senator, right? But at least people know his face and his name.
I've had a wonderful evening with President-elect Trump. We had another discussion about affairs throughout the world, and these discussions I've had with him have been enlightening and interesting and engaging. I've enjoyed them very, very much. He continues with a message of inclusion and bringing people together, and his vision is something which obviously connected with the American people in a very powerful way.
Yeah, so there are tapes. That was 2016 Mitt Romney, and this is now Senator-to-be Mitt Romney. Just days before he is officially sworn in, the 2012 presidential candidate took aim at President Trump in a scathing Washington Post op-ed, writing, quote, Trump's conduct over the past 2 years, particularly his actions this month, is evidence that the president has not risen to the mantle of the office. With the nation so divided, resentful, and angry, presidential leadership in qualities of character is indispensable, and it is in this province where the incumbent's shortfall has been most glaring. Now, as expected, the president fired back on Twitter this morning, saying, quote, here we go with Mitt Romney, but so fast. Question will be, is he a flake? I hope not. Would much prefer that Mitt focus on border security and so many other things where he can be helpful. I won big. He didn't. He should be happy for all Republicans. Be a team player and win. I want to draw attention to something you tweeted last night, which you said, which is totally true for all of us on Capitol Hill. We have all been wondering what kind of posture is Senator Mitt Romney going to strike? Okay, we have about 1,000-word answer here. What's your kind of sense on that right now?
Well, I found it so interesting because there's this time-honored tradition for really high-profile incoming senators to keep their head down once they're sworn in on Capitol Hill and be really focused on their state issue. I mean, we remember Al Franken when he first came into Congress, as well as Elizabeth Warren as well. They wanted to be Minnesota-focused, Massachusetts-focused. And Romney ran his campaign, you know, kind of disassociated from the national issues. He did run a Utah-focused campaign, and I kind of imagine that while he would weigh in once in a while, that's the kind of tack he would want to take, at least for the first several months. I was wrong. So he clearly engaging with the national press right away, making a splash, showing that he does want to be this prominent voice in critiquing the president, even though he did say in his op-ed that he doesn't want to comment on every utterance or tweet or comment. We will certainly be asking him in the Senate hallways, but he's definitely going to have a perch. I mean, Republican officials have told told me that Romney is likely going to get a spot on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which would give him an obvious platform to talk about issues of Russia, North Korea, and challenge the president on those issues. And I'll be interested in seeing on which areas he does kind of back away and decide not to engage. I think that's going to be the tug and the seesaw that we're going to be seeing for quite some time.
Yeah, as you can expect, the president's allies were quickly out with their own thoughts. I want to play some sound from David Bossie, who's very close to the White House, has a lot of meetings at the White House. This is what he had to say.
This is a pathetic attempt by Mitt Romney for relevancy. This is a guy who comes to Washington, and instead of trying to help this president, instead of trying to help the Republican Party, he wants to attack this president and really try to undo and be the center of attention. Because he has his own political machine, his own media operation, and he's used to the national stage, he comes to Washington as somebody who looks like, to me, the Flake, McCain, Corker, all in one guy. And he's going to be the guy who's standing in the breach.
All in one guy. That's impressive. So look, you expect Bossie, you expect Brad Parscale, the campaign manager. What about a relative, perhaps? Say the current RNC chair, who also happens to have Romney in her name, or used to have Romney in her name, who tweeted, POTUS is attacked and obstructed by the mainstream media and Democrats 24/7 for an incoming Republican freshman senator to attack Donald Trump on their first act, feeds into what the Democrats and media want and is disappointing and unproductive. And she pinned that tweet, which I think has meaning with the youth.
Well, it's a good thing the holidays are over, because that would be an awkward family reunion.
But it is an interesting point, because this becomes the story, right? This becomes what everybody's talking about. And Mitt Romney's making a point, but one of the questions I heard repeatedly last night was, what's the broader strategy here? What's he trying to accomplish with this? Do you have any sense at all?
Well, a lot of people were asking when Senator McCain passed away, Jeff Flake retiring, Bob Corker retiring, were there going to be dissenting, high-profile dissenting voices in the Republican Senate conference, because many of the Republicans who were elected were far more pro-Trump than those who were retiring. I think Mitt Romney made clear that he will be one of those high-profile dissenting voices with this op-ed. I mean, he's 71 years old. He's clearly not going, maybe he will spend the rest of his life in the Senate, but he doesn't have time to lose. He's not 40 years old. He probably will not have another job after this, and I think he made it clear he's going to use his time in the Senate and probably making a splash. And I don't think David Bossie is wrong, except that I would take issue with it perhaps not being pathetic, but he clearly does want to focus attention around himself and use his new platform. And he's not just a freshman senator. He was formerly the putative leader of the Republican Party as its presidential nominee.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we have to...
Sorry. The question then just becomes, what can he do with this? Because what you've seen over the last 2 years is it's Trump's party now. And folks who have tried to push back and have tried to be critics have not had a ton of success.
Well, I think you're seeing some of that now with concern about whether Trump will be challenged in a 2020 primary. And the next question becomes, will there be a challenger to Trump? Will Mitt Romney get behind that effort? And perhaps will Mitt Romney challenge Trump?
Yeah, no, I think... we're going to probably have to do a lot of panels on this one. Maybe a column or 9 from Carl Holz over there. All right, and you will see Mitt Romney live today on The Lead. He'll sit down with our own Jake Tapper for his first interview since that op-ed. That's today at 4 p.m. right here on CNN. Up next, Congress gets a makeover, the fresh faces, and what's on the Dems' agenda as they take control of the U.S. House. The 116th Congress will be sworn in tomorrow, and Democrats will take control over the House. But it isn't just the balance of power that's changing. It's the actual makeup of how the new class looks, a lot different from the previous one. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the changes here. And I want to start top line. You look at now how the majorities are actually set up. With that major win in November for House Democrats, they now have 235 seats to 199 seats. That's a lot of space for soon-to-be Speaker Nancy Pelosi to work with on her agenda. The Republicans picked up seats. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell remains Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. That's at 53-47. This is probably the most interesting as we start this new Congress, the diversity changes. You have 40 new women, 20 new veterans, 10 Hispanic or Latino members, 9 new African American members, 3 new LGBTQ members. You're talking about a place that has become far more diverse, far more reflective, frankly, of America to some degree. One of the key issues you always want to go into in a new Congress are who are the new players to keep an eye on. And you first look to leadership. If you look at Democratic leadership, there's 2 that I think really stand out. Hakeem Jeffries, the new Democratic caucus chair, a member that a lot of people see as a rising star, potentially a speaker in the years ahead. Also next to him, Sherry Bustos. She actually comes from a Trump district that she won by more than 20 points. She'll be running the DCCC. How she operates with a lot of the new, more progressive members in that caucus is going to be really interesting. Liz Cheney, obviously the daughter of Vice President Cheney, but is somebody who has really kind of kept a low profile her first couple of years in Congress. Now will be taking more of a major role, particularly on the messaging side of things in the House. Keep an eye on that. In the Senate, you have Joni Ernst, who's carved out more of a name for herself, an Iowa Republican, new GOP conference chair. Todd Young will be responsible for defending a lot of Republican seats in 2020. And John Thune, bumping up to the number 2 slot for John Cornyn. Keep an eye on him. You'll see him a lot in the weeks and months ahead. Here are some members, though, that I think you should keep an eye on. People might differ with me on this one, but these are 4 that I'm keeping my eye on right now. Ben Ray Lujan, he's now been moved up to the assistant Democratic leader. He was the DCCC chair, the recruitment guy, everything that basically had to do with the campaign in 2018. He considers himself the liaison to the new freshman class. He's also someone people view as a potential speaker. Keep an eye on him throughout this Congress. Richie Neal, he's not new. He's been around a long time, but he will now be running the very powerful Ways and Means Committee. Obviously, a lot of people are thinking about what that means for President Trump's taxes, but it's also what that means for tax policy, what that means for the president's new trade deal. Richie Neal is going to play a huge role on that. Lindsey Graham, obviously, another individual who's been around a long time, but has a new chairmanship. And at the Judiciary Committee, his immigration views diverge pretty sharply from where the president's are. Also will have some investigative authority. Keep an eye on that panel. I know Sungmin Kim will be keeping a very close eye on Lindsey Graham. And the last one is Mark Meadows. And the interesting story here is, for months, the story is when if Republicans lose the majority in the House, the Freedom Caucus is essentially dead and gone, because I hate to let you in on this secret, but the minority in the House has no power and really generally doesn't matter. But if you want to see whether or not Mark Meadows still has power in the House, take a look at the 12th day of the government shutdown that we're currently in, a shutdown that Mark Meadows, who's very close to the president, continually urged the president to maintain the fight on. Meadows continues to talk to the president. Meadows continues to have influence on the president. So while he might not be able to do much on the House floor in terms of policy changes, he certainly can with his voice. And if you don't believe me, take a listen to how he reads things.
I've had discussions, as you know, with the president and his team directly.
Have you talked to him since Saturday? And if you have, have you had a chance to speak with him since you met with him on Saturday?
Well, I have. Mr. President, we're going to back you up if you veto this bill. There needs to be someone to support this president and making sure that we indeed make America great again.
Again, I think one of the wildest things here is the death of the Freedom Caucus has been greatly exaggerated to some degree.
Exactly, but their influence will diminish somewhat because they are more powerful in the majority when they do have the power to stop legislation, stop initiatives from the leadership to that they don't want, that they don't support. But clearly, Mark Meadows is going to continue to have that close relationship with Trump. He was in the mix for the chief of staff position once upon a time, and you can get a lot of kind of what Trump is thinking from what Meadows says to reporters on Capitol Hill. But look, House Democrats, once they officially get in the majority tomorrow, could have kind of a Freedom Caucus faction of their own as well, and we'll see what happens once the votes actually begin. But you see a progressive revolt already happening over a simple rules package that House Democratic leaders released last night. Don't want to get too technical. Don't want to get too technical and wonky on this panel, but this rules package is incredibly critical. The House can't operate without it, and already you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ro Khanna threatening to vote against it because of these obscure, what we call PAYGO provisions. They say it's not. They say basically it'll hamstring progressive policies and their agenda. So that could be Pelosi's first real test as speaker, and not even a shutdown vote. Right
out of the gate. Look, one of the interesting things with any new freshman class, there's stars and there's a lot of heat and light. And take a look at what Elle magazine had: 36 new female members of the House reciting the preamble here. Take a listen.
We the people. We the people. We the people.
We the people of the United States. In order to form a more perfect union.
Establish justice.
Ensure domestic tranquility.
Provide for the common defense.
Promote the general welfare.
And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity.
Do ordain y establecemos esta Constitución
for the United States of America.
You've got the L treatment. I mean, that's a powerful video. You've got L treatment. You've got Democrats posing in Vanity Fair at this point in time. I guess my biggest question is, freshmen often come in with grand plans and lots of enthusiasm and then often recede to the reality of how Congress
It is hard to have influence as a new member, but I do think the look of the House Democratic side of the room is going to be so different tomorrow with all these new women, and it's going to be a pretty sharp contrast to the fewer women in the House Republican conference. I do think that, you know, there's been a lot of emphasis on the progressives here who are going to be pushing against Nancy Pelosi, but there's also a new element of the House caucus that are women who have some national security grounding a little bit. I think of Abigail Spanberger, who won in a Republican district in Virginia, and you get a little cred, extra cred, for winning in the other party's district, and she had worked at the CIA, which became exposed during her campaign. And I think she's representative of a group who's going to offer something of a counter to the really push from the left that Pelosi faces. So the left right now is getting a lot of attention, but you have to remember that they got their majority by winning in Republican and swing districts, and you're going to have to take care of that faction
I think
of the party.
People are sleeping on the fact that the bolstered New Democratic caucus, a lot of these people are coming from Trump won districts, and they aren't necessarily, they might not have the best Instagram or comparable Instagram, but they will have a lot of weight.
And you mentioned Sherry Bustos, too, who comes from that, you know, my home state of Illinois, and she's emblematic to me, too, of a new movement in the House of women who are coming up.
Carl, I want to stick with you for 1 second, because this is a really important moment. This is our Nerd Alert segment, which we invented. Someone was talking about the rules package.
Right.
Democrats are also have something in that rules package related to the Gephardt rule. We are not going to talk about cut, go, and pay go. But I'd like you to explain the Gephardt rule. And because it could be enormously significant.
You mean about the debt limit?
Potentially, yes.
Right. So the Democrats back in the day figured out a way to get the debt limit increased without having to really take a vote on it. And, of course, that became a big problem when the Republicans used that as leverage against the Democrats and Obama to cut spending, a thing they seem to have forgotten a little bit about these days. So, you know, to restore that takes away a weapon that can be used against Democrats to force spending reductions. And I think you're going to see, she mentioned pay-go, and I hate to even say those words on TV, but I think you're going to see a lot of emphasis around this with the deficit and how you're going to handle spending, because I do think you're now going to hear from Republicans, especially in the House, they're out of power. We need some cuts, you know, now that we're not there. So the Democrats are trying to protect themselves with the Gephardt rule, named for Dick Gephardt, the former House Majority Leader, these many years ago.
And that has been your Nerd Alert. All right, before we go to break, we did just give you the Nerd Alert, and now here's a history lesson. It was on this day in 1960 that then Senator John F. Kennedy announced he was running for president. Run that old-timey newsreel.
Senator John Kennedy of Massachusetts, Democrat, throws his hat in the presidential ring at a Washington press conference.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the free world. Through its leadership can come a more vital life for all of our people.
Topping our political radar, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke are officially leaving the Trump administration today. Their departures come amid a staff shakeup and multiple ethics investigations into Zinke. Zinke tweeted a short time ago, "It's been a, quote, high honor to serve." President Trump's acting Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, has already moved into Kelly's former office. Joe Biden getting a high-profile vote of confidence today. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. He was asked to weigh in on the 2020 presidential race on WAMC radio this morning. He says Biden has the, quote, best case of all the names in the mix. He says Biden knows how to fly the plane.
You don't hire an airline pilot who has never flown a plane. Where is the credibility in your argument? Joe Biden can say, I was there.
Okay,
I was not the president, but I was the second seat.
And tomorrow, Nancy Pelosi is set to become the Speaker of the House. Pelosi is no rookie. She held the speakership under Presidents George W. Bush and Obama. And Pelosi's daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, was rather blunt this morning, describing her style.
She'll cut your head off and you won't even know you're bleeding. That's all you need to know about her. No one ever won betting against Nancy Pelosi. She's persevered. You got to give her credit. No matter what you think of her, you have to give her credit because think about it. Think about all those presidents she's endured, right? She was the Bush, the Clinton, she's been through it all.
Mr. Hulse, you have covered.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. Not only have I seen her do that to people, I've had it done to me. And it is very effective. And all of a sudden you're standing there and go, wow, I just really got whacked by the Speaker of the House. I will say about the Joe Biden comment, I hope he doesn't read that and think he actually can fly the plane. That's one of those things where maybe he thinks he'll be the pilot. But Nancy Pelosi is very deft. I think that she is the pick that the Democrats decided is the person to take on Trump for that very reason that her daughter was talking about.
She is being tested right out of the gate once again.
I think she likes the test, though.
Oh, I don't think she has any problem with these moments. Yeah. Been there, done that, going to keep doing it. All right, up next, the U.S. pushes for the release of an American detained in Russia on spying allegations as new details emerge.